Hi everybody, my name is Alan. On behalf of the crew, I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Bridging Heaven and Earth. You know, for those of you who've seen the show before know that we always talk in one way or another, and one kind of metaphorically, one spoke of the wheel, of the truth, of love, of that connection between us all, of how in this life we all want to heal the heart, and we all, in a way, to one degree or another, need to heal the heart. And we've talked about that so much that all of us, in one form or another, somewhere along the line, have felt that pain, that rejection, that separation from that which we know we are, that separation from the Creator, that separation from what we call God or love or truth or Brahman or whatever form or religion we've been brought up with, or whatever form of religion or understanding we've come to know. And then we come into this life, we grow into this life, we have the trials and tribulations of this life, we get married, we get divorced, we have children, we have jobs, we have money, we have crisis, we have death. And yet all of us in some way or another, every minute of every day want, as we've said so often, to feel love and to share it. That ultimately is what a human being wants. Every human being of whatever age, whatever race, whatever religion, whatever nationality. And we were talking earlier, David Jones and I, who's the guest tonight, about so much of us. It's been proven that 99.9% of us is the same through DNA testing and all the different testing, is that scientifically 99.99% of us all are the same. And then how do we manage to focus on that separation? That things, those minute things that create all the beauty and the diversity of this life, but in the way a lot of humans look at it, create the division, the separation, and the we and the they. And these are the people I can love, and these are the people I can't love, because of their color, because of their race, because of their sexual preference, because of their age. And again, this show, Bridging Heaven and Earth, is about coming into that love, into that oneness, to recognize the connection between us all. And as you know, people come in from literally all over the world to share their understanding, their love, their connection, their gifts, their joys, their destinies with us here live on the set, and with you as you watch it either live or for the years to come, or listen to it on the internet or see it on the internet. David Jones is the president and founder of Heart Ministries. And it's so close. When I saw that, I mean, we've talked so much about healing the heart, and he wants to free the heart. But ultimately, it's that same. It's to come into that knowing of the love. And the vision of David's and the Free the Heart Ministries is to embrace the world with love, with leadership, and spiritual hope and spiritual navigation. He conducts workshops and retreats on healing and freeing the heart all over the world. And he's had a special, we were talking this afternoon, how the synchronicity and the destiny of his life led him into prisons to run inner child workshops, into running freeing the heart workshops with murderers and criminals, and to see their openness in a way, and to see their love, and to see how they've been hurt and never been loved. And you wonder why they became dysfunctional, so much hurt in their lives. And he goes and deals with it the way we would look at it, most of us, the hardest cases, and comes out with extraordinary results. And so many people come and volunteer to be part of that. And that's what David's life is about, is to heal the heart, to free the heart, to bring us into that knowing. And we also have two very beautiful videos. One is a video of Sheoli, who is on the board of advisors of the Bridging Heaven Earth Foundation. Has put together, she runs a a dolphin swim on the big island of Hawaii, and she's taken some extraordinary footage, and we've put some music and edited it and put it together. A beautiful video for you to see. And then we picked out, we've gotten a lot of requests, and Cecilia couldn't come back on the show, another former guest of Bridging Heaven and Earth who's on the board of advisors, and we got a lot of requests for one of the songs she did, Amazing Grace, so we pulled that out of the archives, and we're going to show that to you tonight, because it seems like everybody wanted to see it, and she moved to the East Coast and couldn't be on the show tonight because of other commitments. So we have an extraordinary show with the videos and David. So settle in, join me in a short meditation, then we have the video and David, and it's an opportunity for us all again to go wherever we are, whoever we are, to go one step more into that love, more into that connection, more into that recognition. So please join me in a short meditation. If you don't know how to do one, just relax, settle into your chair, and just for the next 15 minutes, just take it easy and just be open. Thank you. Thank you. So we're going to start tonight's show with the Sheoli dolphin video. Sheoli runs Awakening in Paradise, swimming with live dolphins, not captive dolphins, on the big island of Hawaii. Members of the Bridging Heaven and Earth crew edited it and put the video together, and the music is by Charlie Thweatt, Thweatt. And it's really beautiful. Just settle in. When we come back, we'll be with David on the set. So, the Sheoli video.
This is called Dolphin Dance. In a faraway turquoise sea, a family of dolphins come to me. They remember who I am and lovingly greet me as only dolphins can, leaping in the air with graceful flips and spins, then returning by my side with joyful, familiar grins, inviting me to join them, weaving patterns through the sea, inviting me to open to that place where I am free. Held in these warm waters, feeling newly born, surrounded by this family, I know I am home. We play and touch and frolic beneath the gentle waves. They show me where we came from, etched on ancient caves. They awaken all my memories of who I've been before, then help me find forgiveness to suffer nevermore. It's now your time, they tell me, to join with all like souls, to take your stance in the world, accepting your new roles. We're on the edge, they tell me. We must forgive the past and live our lives from our hearts, allowing peace at last. Remind all whose path you cross, simply by being you, living in God's consciousness. From this, they'll take their cue. We are always with you and are grateful for your grace. Your loving light connects us in a heartbeat to this place. So call on us to help you and know we will be there. And now come dance our dance with us and love and play and share. And on we danced till sunset and on into dream time until the new day's dawning and resumed our dance divine.
Hi, well, we're on the set with David. Welcome, David.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. So when you talk about, you heard the opening, and when you talk about freeing the heart, I mean, what made you pick that name, and what do you mean by that?
It really came from when I started my work in the prison system. What I saw it as the symbol was of the bars that they're caged behind, is pulling those apart and a heart merging out.
Wow.
And I realized...
Well, there's your logo.
There's the logo, yeah. And I realized that it's not just people who are in prison or behind walls that keep their hearts pent up and held back. And you just look at a daily routine of going from job to job to your restaurant to wherever it is, and people hold back and keep themselves closed off.
Why do you think they do that? Why is the heart not free? I mean, we live in a, in a way, a Garden of Eden here, and what prevents us, all of us in one way or another, from...
We can go back to when we first come into this world, and how are we raised? Do our parents teach us to be loving, open, to be trusting, to share our thoughts, and to be vulnerable, and to be kind and gentle with each other? Are we taught, to be mean and harsh and cruel and live in a world of fear, and to communicate our fear, and to come from our lack of faith and our lack of trust, and etc. When we come from that place, we close ourselves off to each other.
So, I mean, wouldn't you say that most of us are somewhere in the gray area?
Mm-hmm.
A little level of trust, a little of fear,
Right. But I think the goal is, I think what we're all striving for, and I'm sure you've spoken many times about enlightenment, is how much of our time can we love, and can we live from that place of unconditional love and peace and truth. And I think when we find somebody that can live as many hours as possible, is it possible to do it 24 straight or 24/7, 365? Boy, I sure would like to live 1 year in pure bliss. But I think that's what we're striving.
Oh, 1 hour.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a good hour as a start.
Oh,
maybe this hour.
Maybe 2 minutes here. I don't know.
Oh my God, we got it. He's on his second 30 seconds. Go.
Go. Bliss. But I think that's what we're striving for, is to find that connection within ourselves. And when we find that connection with ourselves, then we can connect with another person. But until we can connect here, you cannot connect to another person on an intimate level, which is what human beings are striving for more than anything else in life, is to be connected. And if we can't connect
we
with
are
ourselves,
connected, but that's the illusion that we're not.
Right.
So how do we break through that illusion? How do you... So, you've had, we were talking earlier, from the time you were a child, you were really exposed to many spiritual teachings and paths. So what did you synthesize out of that? What is one of the ways or one of the tools that you find helpful to free the heart, to connect to that bliss?
Right. I think the biggest one is I was really blessed in my belief of growing up in what God was. And I never thought of God as being some far-off person sitting up in heaven keeping track of what we do right and wrong. I've always felt that all I got to do is close my eyes and God's right there. So I've never...
And you had that experience as a child,
right,
knowing that.
Oh, I can remember being a little kid, 6, 7 years old, mom and dad not doing well in the house, going for a walk outside, and I knew I wasn't talking to myself. I knew I was talking to something bigger. If you want to call it God, I don't, God's what it felt like to me. And I've never felt that separation. Even in the darkest, deepest times when life hasn't been as good as I wanted to in my physical experience, inside I've never felt separated from God.
So would you say that you were particularly blessed to have that experience and know that as a child, as opposed to other people who somehow didn't feel that connection and thought that there was a wrathful God or...
Right. Yeah, I think that is a blessing, to never to live in fear of God, or to think that God is a critical God or a judgmental God, or if you watch the sports teams on TV, that
He's
God...
only for one team.
Yeah, it's only for one team.
Certainly
it's like,
no, God was rooting for us today.
Yeah, God wants you to win, or God wants you to catch that ball. Didn't want the other... Give me a break.
No, he wants us to be #1 in the ratings. So that's why.
Absolutely, yeah. For
no,
you,
that's why it worked.
Yeah, you're the exception.
Yeah,
you're
no,
the exception.
I understand.
Yeah, all right. Well, just so you know.
I took that under advisement.
Well, that's good. That's good.
It worked out fine.
Yeah.
So, and then you proceeded, and then you started, sharing this understanding, this bliss, this experience, this lack of separation with people, right?
Right. Yeah. I've just always wanted people. I mean, my biggest thing is I just want people to know they're loved. And I think the two things that people want the most in life is to love and to feel love. And that right there is what continues us in deepening our awareness of our connection to that inner self or that inner presence of God. And
so you were doing this through local workshops and healings and teachings all over.
Right.
And then why don't you talk about the synchronicity that got you involved in the prison? Because I think that's a little unusual, that most people would rather do it in nice halls.
Yeah, nice hotel room. Well, I would too. I would too, actually, if truth be known.
You'd like to do both.
Yeah, do both, which I do. The connection is I started the workshop in Oklahoma City in the church that I was at the time. And in my time of doing the workshop there, I had a woman come through the workshop whose son was in prison. And while he was in prison, he was raped. And while he was raped, he got AIDS. And when he was released, they released him, and he lived 6 to 10 months, something like that. And it was shortly thereafter that upon his death, she asked me to do the funeral. And when I did the funeral, she asked me, like within a week, says, what would it take for you to do the workshop in a prison setting? And I said, well, you have to just get permission from, I guess, the warden. And while she had been visiting her son in the prison, she had met the warden and would visit with him whenever she saw him, and went and met with him, and he was very open and receptive to the idea. And so I was a novice.
And this was when?
This was in 1993, I believe.
Okay, and we're shooting in 2002,
yeah,
so it's
been 9 years since my first time.
You've been involved in going into prisons.
Right.
And why don't you tell your experience in the prisons, and then why don't you compare it to people theoretically on the outside world? Maybe it's more the same than you would think.
Yeah. Well, my first time in, I was just, my only perception or picture of what a prison was what you see on TV and then the movies, which is the farthest thing from the truth. And I remember the first time that I walked in, and they're all dressed in their blues, denim blues and Levi's. And the two things that shocked me was, one, to see a 15, 16-year-old kids in there. And because you always think of them being 25, 30, and they're all muscular, and they're all,
so here are kids with acne and just starting to shave.
Yeah. And you visit with them, and you say, how long are you in for? Life. I actually met the youngest prisoner in Oklahoma that had been sentenced to life at 15. And then
you can be treated as an adult if you do some horrendous crime.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other one was to see how many people were in their 60s, 70s, and early 80s. Is you're just not prepared to see senior citizens in prison. And then when you visit with them and they've been in 50, 60, 70 years. I mean, that's tough. To see someone that has been caged up for that long and has just never been touched.
And what happens to them?
They just withdraw. They withdraw, and there's no. They get so far inside of them that it feels almost as if they're like deep into a well, and you got to throw a lifeline into them.
To open, even to get to the opening set.
Right. But the thing I found is, no matter how abused someone has been, no matter how tough their life has been, no matter how many years they've been locked away, there is something that is far stronger than any of those human experiences, and that is the power of unconditional love. And when I found that when you can create a space, even in prison, you know, regardless of the appearance, and the first one I did looked in the back wall, just like this, behind where the cameras are, glass walls, and you can imagine 4 or 5 correctional officers in there with their shotguns right there. We had no one in the room.
We only
with
have
us.
2.
Yeah, 2
yeah,
here.
No,
Well, you need more. You need more.
No, they've
some
seen
for
the
the
show before, so they only send 2 out here.
2,
We're,
yeah. Well,
we're
what about the audience?
Well, the audience is always packing.
Yeah. And so imagine creating a setting of love in that type of setting. But what I found is if you can create an environment of pure love, which means they're just accepted, they're treated like a normal human being, that the healing is far greater and takes effect far quicker than all the negative stuff that took years to build up. Because love is the most powerful force there is known to humanity, to the spiritual world, and to the world that we live within. And when you apply that on a human level, there's nothing.
Okay, so why don't you describe, so you come to this prison and a number of people sign up.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to be wanting what you're offering. So
Yeah.
you have a brochure that they pass around.
Yeah, we put a flyer up.
Yeah. And then 100 or 150
Mm-hmm.
inmates of all different varieties, all different crimes.
Right.
All different sentences from 1 year, 6 months to 90,000
Lifetime,
years.
Life, yeah.
And show up, and you show up with, did you say one for every
For every 4 people, yeah.
So if there were 150, you'd show up with like 40 some odd people or something.
Volunteers
that come in and do this work, play, destiny.
Right. For the opportunity to make a difference.
Right, and there's no pay for it up until this point.
No.
So they all come in and do it. And so, okay, so you come in with this army of people in a
Right.
sense. And so what happens? How does it start?
Then we start off and we say, we ask them all why they're here. No, because that would scare us all at that moment. Yeah, that's one of those things, you know, what do you want to get out of this weekend? Well, we want to get out, you know. It's not a good idea.
If you could put us in your backpack,
we'd appreciate it, yeah, definitely. No, we start off with the basics of basically where we're born. That when we come into this world, you know, we come into every baby that's ever been born is living and will live, comes into this world with the purest qualities of the divine gift of God, which is love, peace, truth, all those sort of things, innocence. And then we talk about how it is from an early point, and sometimes it's from the moment of our birth or the first few weeks. Before our birth even, yeah. That we begin to cover it up or begin to wrap the layers of the onion or a protection around us. And most people that are in prison, they have wrapped a very thick layer of protection. And, you know, some of these inmates, you know, when they were 6 months old, 8 months old, were already being beaten like a man would be beaten. And, you know, they've been burned by cigarettes, or they've been, you know, sexually abused at 6 months old, a year and a half old. Not too long ago, I had someone who was aware of a baby that had been vaginally raped and had to wear a colostomy for the rest of their life. So, you know, when a
lot
man,
of negativity early on.
Yeah, and it's more than, it's at a very intense level. Like most of us, you know, have had, you know, dad doesn't tell us he loves us and that. And those are traumatic things where we've been sexually abused and verbally abused. But it's kind of like, think of all that stuff and then intensify it about 10 times.
Yeah, you were telling me a story earlier, tell you about the woman in the womb who was the 7th or 8th child of this person who had no money and, you know, no father.
Right.
Why don't you just tell that a little, because it'll give a feel for it.
Yeah, going back to what really got me all started on this journey is I was working with a young lady who was in her about 20, and she'd basically felt her whole life that she'd never been wanted. I mean, through 20 years, and which, you know, kind of surprised you. Beautiful woman, I mean, beautiful young girl. And so I had her one time, I said, I want you to close your eyes and go back and remember the first time that you felt unwanted. And she went back to about 5 and 3. And then she closed her eyes, and all of a sudden the tears just started streaming down her face. And I said, well, what's going on with you? She says, I can remember being in my mother's womb and my mother attempting to physically strangle me from the outside. And there was a part of me that goes, well, that can't be happening. I mean, I'm just, you know, I was 25 or so.
Why would somebody do this?
Yeah, and how can you remember that? You're in the womb. You're not out here yet.
Right.
And so what happened when she left our time, she went home and asked her mother, and the mother admitted that that's actually what happened because she was the 7th of 7 children. And it was an unwanted pregnancy. There was no man around, no husband, no father, anything, and the woman was struggling financially. And so the last thing that she needed was another baby to take care of. So she didn't actually try to physically grab her stomach, but just on the outside she was just so angry at herself and, my God, the responsibility of another child, that she wanted to. And that left a lasting impression into the mind. And then what happens is when those are etched into the subconscious mind, then that becomes the issue or the building point that will drive our life. And so if what's etched in there is you're not wanted, then what you do is in every relationship or in school or whatever, you either prove to the world that you're not wanted, or you prove to your friends, or you keep showing up in relationships or allowing yourself to get into relationships that will further reinforce that you're not wanted or desired or lovable. And that's a tough way to go through life.
It's not very empowering.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
So you're in the prison, and how do you unwind that kind of hurt that goes so far and so deep into the womb, or into, just such powerful abuse? So how do you, in a 3-day period, start to unwind that and do unwind that?
And you want me to give you that answer in the next 8 minutes?
Next 4.5. No.
Oh, yeah. Through a series of exercises, lecture, one-on-one, mingling, going from one person to another, type of exercises. And basically we do things where, they're speaking from their heart. We try to get people out of their head so they're not processing every thought, everything through their head, that they begin to speak from their heart. And when people speak from their heart, they'll start to share their truth. And so, what I found is that most of us have, what they found is that when we have a traumatic experience, that when it gets lodged into the subconscious part of the brain, is that one traumatic experience is does far more damage or is very harmful than when you have a whole bunch of positive things. And so when you get a traumatic experience and it gets lodged in there, it's kind of like taking this as the memory, and you got all this stuff just wrapped around it. And then it's all of this stuff here that drives that person. And so what we strive to do is create the opportunity for the person, through sharing, through groups, through big processes involving everyone, to begin to unwrap that pain and that hurt.
To just bring it out into the open.
Right.
To shine light where there was darkness and just repression before.
Right.
So once that happens, that's freeing unto itself.
Right.
So they know, in a sense, a good reason for their feelings of whatever they felt.
Right. And when we basically, what I always tell everyone is there's no big secret to healing. I think a lot of times people think, it's, on TV, it's when you come up front, somebody slaps you on the forehead, you pass out, or wiggle around and you're healed. Well, for some people, maybe that has worked. Mm-hmm. But what I have found is the most powerful way is you got to get it out of your mouth. Mm-hmm. Is most people will keep stuff inside of them, and most of that uncomfortable, that hurtful stuff, people will keep it inside for them their entire life. They'll take that stuff to the grave, because the thought of sharing it, that it's going to embarrass somebody, or you're going to let the secret out, or whatever. But who is being harmed by keeping that inside is the person that's holding it, the secret keeper.
So you've developed like tools and techniques and modalities that allow the space of freedom, the space of unconditional love, with all these people who come into this setting, be it a prison or a workshop or anything, wherever it is.
Right, absolutely.
And that allows people to reveal,
right,
because they feel safe.
Right, absolutely. And then once they feel safe, and that we've kind of purged some of that negative stuff, or in a sense release this stuff off, then what we try to do our very best is then to fill it back up with love. And so through a series of loving exercises and that, we do our best to wrap back up those wounds and fill them back in with that presence of love. And what we found is that when that happens, is what many people have experienced sometimes in workshops is that they're really good at clearing away that hurt and pain, but they don't fill it up with anything, and it creates a void. And a void acts like a vacuum. And meaning that whatever it comes in contact with the next day, the next week, that's what it sucks into it. So as long as it comes in contact with really positive stuff, then that's great. But most of us...
Yeah, it always struck me as weird just saying no, but you have to say yes to something.
Right, right.
Or else there's a big problem.
Oh, absolutely. So what we try to do is make sure that we wrap everything back up with that power of unconditional love through just being kind and speaking gently to each other and embracing. Many of these inmates that are in prison, they don't have family come visit them. I mean, they might be in prison for 28 years and have never had anyone come and say happy birthday to them or anything. And they can have no physical contact with staff. if they touch somebody like that, they're written up. There's no such thing as a hug. They can maybe handshake one of the correctional officers, maybe. That's if the correctional officer initiates it. So imagine going years without ever being touched with kindness. And so when I bring in the staff, and 70–80% of them are women that come in, the thought of embracing...
Your staff, not the staff.
Right, the staff that comes with me, the volunteers.
Right.
When they embrace and treat them as men and not as less than, that alone is so healing. I mean, it's almost like, sometimes I feel like the workshop is secondary. It's the in human contact that is so healing and so powerful.
Well, you're just, in a sense, setting up a format where that can take place.
Right, absolutely, absolutely.
So, and your results have been off the charts in a way. And even, I mean, the thing that struck me when we were talking earlier is that even in a 3-day period, and the momentum of 40 years in prison, that it's so powerful that even though you don't come back, you never see these people again. That from what you've heard from the wardens and the police people, is that it absolutely changes the entire environment.
Yeah, it makes an impact. Is one of my biggest supporters and fans is the director of the Department of Corrections for the state of Nevada, which is Jackie Crawford, and she's been in corrections for 34 years. And as she says in her letters to me, and at any time I want to use her name, she always says, in 34 years I've never seen anything have the impact that our program does.
Wow.
And that's a high, there's only 50 directors in the state of, in the country, so that's real strong.
One for every state.
Yes.
And she's for Nevada.
Yes. So that's very, very
and
high
most
praise.
of their illegality is legal in Nevada.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to find a vice there.
Oh my God. All right, so maybe what we'll do now is have the Cecilia video. I know people have requested it from all over. It's the Cecilia video, Amazing Grace.
That saved
beautiful. So we're back on the set with David. So, do you find that these people in prisons who one would look at and say have had a tougher time in a sense, that there's a difference or it's more or less the same as dealing with people on the outside world? How does that work?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all, I think the only thing that separates people that are in prison than most of the people I hang out with is just they've been caught. No.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
they're behind the bars, the other ones should be.
Yeah.
So who's running the asylum?
Yeah, I just think the biggest thing is that if you could hear the life stories of what they've been raised in, as I was sharing with you earlier, it's a miracle there are not more serial killers.
They're just so traumatic.
Oh, it's absolutely traumatic. What most kids, you know, what people see on TV a few minutes of, that's what they've grown up in. You know, think of the most severe, you know, case you've ever seen on the news or something, and put in an extenuated time, 6, 8, 10, 12 years of, you know, being tortured, seeing pets tortured and seeing your mother raped by the husband and then by his brother and their sister. You know, who knows what takes place. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And the little
It's starting
kids,
to be like the Jerry Springer show.
oh yeah, oh,
so exciting.
Oh,
Moving it to
yeah, we make it a good thing. But I think, you know, your average person has all had some challenges in life. You know, I haven't met anybody, what I always tease anybody is that if you believe you've never had any dysfunction in your life, then basically for the first 18 years or so of your life, you've had Jesus and Mother Teresa as your parents, meaning that they were perfect 24/7, 365 for the first 18 years of your life.
There's rumors about both of them.
Well, yeah.
We've had a lot of stories on this show.
Yeah, they're in the house now.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, unless you had somebody that was just, that they never wavered from being absolutely loving and kind and gentle and listened to you and spent time with you and all that sort of thing and only praised you every moment of your life for 18 years, then probably we've had parents that have wavered at least a moment or two.
Or if it wasn't them, it was in school, it was friends. It was, I mean,
oh,
you're
yeah.
in a physical body, you've been rejected
Oh,
somewhere.
at least. Yeah,
Yeah,
at
right,
least.
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're talking about degree, but the degree of people in prison is just so extreme.
Yep. Yeah.
And that, but in a sense, in a weekend, you can have results that are almost more extraordinary because they're coming further.
Oh, it's just like taking somebody that's been in the desert for 30 years and giving them a drink. Is what it's like going into a prison and supplying love. Love is the farthest thing from their experience. What their normal experience is survival. They're in the survival mode. And so when you can shift them out of the survival mode, and the only thing I know that can do that on a healthy level is love.
Why don't you talk about, so you know, part of the sessions is to open up and reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were talking about, like, just say yes. Mm-hmm. Yes to love, yes to understanding, yes to tolerance, yes to consciousness. Now, how in a day and a half do you give enough momentum, talk about the tools, talk about the ways you do it, to fill that up and you don't come back?
Right. I think one of the big ones we do is, you know, from the Bible we've all heard, ye shall tell, or ye shall, if I can remember myself.
I did that once in the opening. I started bubbling around.
Yeah, ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free.
Right.
So we actually do an exercise where they go around and they tell the truth about their family. And so, you know, look in your own life. If you were to go around and tell the truth, you know, from
My parents
it could be
watch,
scary.
My family watches this show.
Well,
I can't do
yeah.
that.
But it could be scary. No,
No,
but I mean, if most of us look back in our life and you think, what's the truth that we seldom or never told about our family? And family can be currently what you're living in right now. You know, go from 0 to however many years you are old, there can be some tough ones in there that we share. Yeah, 900. And so in that sharing, I mean, that's where the healing begins. It's kind of the chipping away or peeling away the layer of the onion. And then another one, we have them sit down and they role play. They have people role play either mom, dad, brother, sister, person they murdered, whoever it is, and they tell that person the truth. And so, you know, what I ask is, if everybody that was watching this looks in their own life, is who are the people in your life, the top 5, that you've never told the truth or never fully expressed how you really feel, good or bad? You know, truth doesn't mean just the bad stuff. You know, many of us have had people that have had lasting impacts on our life, and we've never told them how much we appreciate and love them. So that's a real strong one that it's real powerful, real emotional. You know, that's really uplifting. And then we do another one. It's a real simple exercise, nothing, you know, overly imaginative about it. It's simply writing ourselves a love letter. And what I found, not anything to do with people in prison, when I was doing counseling all the time, is I've met men in 60, 70 years old that have never once told themselves that they love themselves. And so imagine we go through our entire life never saying a kind word or praising ourselves, and instead what we do is we're critical. You know, we have that self-criticizing voice that we look at our body and we go, you know, we're always condemning our body, and then every time we make a mistake we just, jump all over ourselves for a mistake, but then when something really goes well, we don't ever say anything good about that. And so you take a person that has spent 60, 70 years and never said a kind word to themselves. I mean, that's pretty tough. So what we do is we just have them, simple process, write themselves a love letter when they were a little child. So if you were to go back and we could suddenly make a 6-year-old Alan magically appear here.
Yeah, most people say my emotional age is about that right here.
Yeah, well, I was giving you credit.
Yeah, no. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. A generous guest.
Yeah. But if you were to go back and tell him how much you love him and appreciate him on a regular basis, that makes a huge shift. And so what I always challenge them is, if for the next 30 days, if you can read this love letter, they write in 7, 8, 10 minutes. If you can read that love letter to yourself twice a day for the next 30 days, I promise you it makes a shift. Because that little guy that, you know, we say we manifest out here, but that part of us is inside of us. That's our innocence.
That's the inner child you try to get back to.
Right.
And love that inner child.
Right.
And then you find out that that inner child is almost the same as every other inner child. So then we can love everybody.
Right. There, you got it. You got
it.
You got it. Because the truth is, we cannot love another human being more than what we love ourselves. We can pretend to, but you can never love another person more than you love yourself. How can you? Is because
you
that
don't
love,
have the capacity.
The love is right here.
Right.
And if you don't have love right in here, then you're not sharing it. And I promise you, it starts when these boys that are now in prison, they never had a dad that said, hey, you know, I really love you. I'm really proud of how good you are. I think you're the best baseball player. I think you're smart, you're intelligent. You can accomplish anything you want when you grow up. They don't have any of that. And so what I found is, and then what happens...
And this is true for women too. I mean,
yeah.
Right.
We just happen to do it in men prison. Most there's...
I mean, you have done it in female.
One time, there's 1,800,000 people in prison. 1.4 million are men. So there's about 400,000 in prisons across the country that are women. And so we found that if we can work on loving that part that's within us, then what happens is it starts to spread. And they even start to love the correctional officers and speak to them. The relationship shifts.
So the only thing, what do you leave them with, like tools, like a meditation tool, a tolerance tool, besides the letter that they're supposed to read for 30 days?
Well, another big focus that we spend like most of one day on is how to deal with anger. Is what most people have never been taught the appropriate way to handle anger.
And what is that?
What is it? The appropriate way is most of us have only learned to dump or be degrading to another person, either scream, holler, threaten, cuss, either another person or ourselves, or to beat or to break things. And so we go and we shift that energy and teach people that, you know, that one, instead of screaming at a person, another way that you can release that same emotion that you are in an unhealthy way, which is anytime you're screaming, shaming, blaming another person, is that you can do basically the primal scream. It's just releasing the tension. And so we have an intense time where there's a lot of screaming. And another part where we blow out the emotion and feeling is we have people actually blow balloons up. And what I do is I have them close their eyes, kind of thing. I mean, we do a whole process getting them all riled up, kind of thing, in a positive fashion. And I have them close their eyes and I go, who's the top 10 people you're most angry at in your life? And then we bring in balloons, and we literally bring in thousands. And people will blow up 40 to 50 balloons just around the emotion and the hurt that they have either towards themselves or another person or people in their lives. And so we go through, and that's one way that we release the anger. And then the tool that we leave them with is the way that we can continue to work on it is when they go to the weight room. Is, you know, that's a great release when you're in there pumping iron, instead of just going, you know, 1, 2, 3, you know, be pumping who you're upset with. And it's a lot easier to release it on pumping iron than beating on each other or raping each other or stealing from each other, which is all ways that anger come out sideways in an unhealthy fashion. So the anger is probably the strongest thing that we teach them in a positive way. So
once you kind of short-circuit that, then there's a space where something else, an openness, a love, an understanding can rise up.
Yeah, you clean that stuff out, then there really is, like, now you've created another void. And so once again, what we do is we fill in the void with, we give them an opportunity to forgive themselves and to forgive others or be forgiven. which is an extremely strong thing in one's life, is when we can feel forgiveness either for things that we've done or that we feel other people have done for ourselves, to us, when we can move through that forgiveness, and then we just do another loving exercise, which is, there's some touching and just communication of love at a very pure level. And so once again, it just fills up that void that that had been filled previously by all the hurt and pain that we've gathered along our earth journey.
So a lot of spiritual paths or teachers have taught like a quieting the mind, quieting, the senses, a meditation of some sort. Did you find that was a value? Was that not what you found was the appropriate tool to use that way? I mean, you've been taught meditations and done meditations in your life. So do you bring that into your work or in the prisons or otherwise?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we start off every session with a centering, a focusing time, and all that sort of thing. But I've heard a lot of people over the years say, the way I handle my anger is I just turn within and go silence. And it's kind of like, anger is a defense mechanism, and it's used to protect us, as the healthy thing for it. And it's also, when we go back to prehistoric times, what were we? We were hunters and gatherers in that sense. And it's kind of like I always joke in the workshop with people. I say, can you imagine just before you go out to slay this 18-ton brontosaurus or whatever it is, can you just see a bunch of group of people laying, around the fire going, let that brontosaurus lay down so that we may slew it. No, you got to get yourself pumped up and charged up. And so what I found is the best way that you have to release the anger is you got to be emotional with it. And you got to be connected. And, afterwards, once you get it out, boy, then is the best time to center oneself or meditate or pray or anything like that.
So you teach a certain type of, once the anger is released, once the forgiveness is there, a tool for somebody to experience an inner peace.
Oh, absolutely. Which is through the meditation, which is through, and I'm really very conscientious as speaking to them to be conscious of how we speak to ourselves. When they're standing in line, waiting 20 minutes to get the delicious food that they're served, the filet mignons and all that, you understand that is a very big joke.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't seen a piece of meat in years, or real, that you can identify anyway.
Right. That's not moving.
Yeah, it's not moving. What I teach them, you hope they're not moving. Right. What I teach them is, while you're standing there, be saying kind things to ourselves. It's just common sense stuff. Many
they
people
can't even read the National Enquirer like the rest of us.
Right, standing in the grocery store. And it's the same thing I say to people when I'm doing the workshop for the public is, when you're standing in the grocery store line, instead of thinking the cashier doesn't know anything or looking over another person's basket and thinking what's healthy or not healthy or what you would buy.
Why do they have 15 items in the 12-item line?
Yeah, and counting it for
them. What kind of animal is in front of me?
Yeah, or Murphy's Law, the line you're in is always the slowest, and kind of thinking about...
You too?
Oh, yeah, it works that way. So instead of being focused on that, is what are you saying to yourself? Is talk kind to yourself, is praise yourself, and be kind. So I mean, it's just the simple stuff.
Not make fun of everybody else?
Well, that's good too, but... But the funny thing about it is that part that we're talking about all the time, the subconscious mind, it doesn't know when you're speaking about another person or yourself.
It just hears negativity.
It hears whatever you're speaking, and it doesn't know if you're condemning, criticizing another human being or yourself, and it doesn't know when you're loving another person.
Because everybody is, in a sense, the same, and it knows that.
Right.
So it's like whatever you say, there's a mirror there.
Right. Your subconscious mind is kind of like the keyboard on a computer. Your conscious mind, it's like it doesn't matter who runs that keyboard. And it doesn't know if you're the one that usually runs it, if somebody else comes in there new and is running, it just still does the same input. And that's kind of the same way your brain is. It doesn't know that there's another person you're talking about. It just thinks that's the input. If they're calling another person stupid, dumb, or where'd they get those clothes, do they always shop at that place, kind of thing. When we're putting them down, we're really putting ourselves down. And it's kind of like Jesus knew a long time ago, mere 2,000 years, or 2002 now, love thy neighbor as thyself. And when we speak nice about a person, when you tell somebody I love you and I admire you and that, yourself doesn't know you're talking about another human being. It thinks you're still talking about yourself. And so those are the kind of things, the tools that we work on with them.
Wow. So, and the results have been in prison and out of prison, that when people leave this 3-day experience, just dramatically change.
Yeah, I think we do within the restraints of a prison setting and a 22 hours or so that we spend with them, I mean, I think we do have as much effect as humanly possible within our framework and our capabilities at this time. Is there more that can be done? Probably. Would I like to have more lengthy shots with? Absolutely. You know, because they are so responsible, as well as everybody does in the public. You know, people respond to love. They might not want to at first, but they will.
No, I think everybody, you know, like I said at the open,
Yeah.
I mean, really wants to feel love and share it.
Yeah.
I mean, the rest, you know, you don't want to be a Buddhist, you don't want to be, you know, anything. You just want to feel love and share it.
Right.
And the rest, you know, you figure it'll take care of itself.
Yeah,
exactly.
absolutely.
So we were talking earlier that under the right conditions, I mean, you've trained, what did you say, 2,500 people that have gone with you that have done enough workshops with you that they go into prisons to work as part of this team that goes in.
Right, yeah, in the years I've been doing the workshop, I've done 110 workshops now on the inner child, which is the main one I do.
And that's in the prisons?
In the prisons I've done 15 workshops or so, and then in the public is where I have to feed myself. I have to eat, so I eat through the public kind of thing.
Eat the public.
I try not to eat the public. But in a sense, though, so in the time we've averaged, sometimes I have a staff as big as 45, and sometimes staff is. I was in Philadelphia last weekend. I think our staff was 15. So and you average it out, it comes out to a lot of people. So I mean,
but basically, I mean, under the right conditions, that we were talking, if there was a grant available, then you could basically expand this program and go into every prison in every city and bring this. And the more if you could go there once a month for a while, or people you've trained to do that. Obviously, you can't because there are a lot of prisons and a lot of places. But
in an ideal world, in 5 to 7 years, I could have every prison covered in the country. Because most states only have. Oklahoma has 13 prisons. Nevada has 14. So we're not talking a huge number. California, a lot of prisons. Texas, a lot of prisons. New York, a lot of prisons. But most states, you're only talking 12 to 16 prisons. So you're not talking a huge, unfathomable numbers.
And what's the percentage of people who seem interested in the prison population? 10%?
Oh no, 50. Easy 50.
50% are interested. Want to come.
Yeah, because there's nothing for them. Most in a prison, say of 1,500 people, maybe there's 200 jobs. So now you got 1,300 people that
just standing around,
and that's why they have to have TV. That's why they have to have a gym, and they have to have a weight room.
But there's no place
activities.
For creativity to happen.
No. And I think people here, well, they can get their education there. Yeah, they can get a GED, but we're talking the class setting, the teachers. It's a very poor environment. And then they say, well, they can get their degree. Yeah, but they can't get it on the internet. It's through mail order and all that. It's not like they got Harvard professors standing there teaching them.
Not in most prisons.
Not in most prisons, yeah. So they're not, getting that type of.
So really, 50. So if you go into a prison, 50% of the people want to sign up and take part in your 3 days.
Easy.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's astonishing.
Yeah, because if you're in there and you're sitting in an 8x12 cell, you kind of start reflecting back on your life and kind of go, I made some poor choices in my life.
And plus, this is a 3-day thing I don't know anything about. The rest I know is crap.
Yeah. Well,
so I mean, even if that level.
Yeah, I'll come to this crappy thing for a while and see what that's like.
Yeah, see what
Yeah.
We hear there are cute chicks there or something.
Oh, hey, and they're getting out of their cell. I mean, that's a bonus. That's a bonus.
Wow.
Women out of the cell, that's a bonus.
Wow. So, amazingly enough, I think we're coming to the end of the show again, and, I just want to thank David for, coming. Literally, he flew in from Oklahoma City just to be with us tonight and to share his story of the power of what love can do. When you just bring a touch of that unconditional love anywhere, to the hardest prisons, to the hardest prisoners, it just opens, it just means something, it just changes. And for each of us who are not in the physical prisons of this world, but are in all our crazy prisons, it's time to love, it's time to share love. So let's go deeper, let's do it. Good night, God bless you. Thanks for coming.